A lot of people on the internet don't seem to fully comprehend who Cloud Strife is as a character, and while I'm fully aware that a large chunk of it is due to his cameos in various other video games, even people who play the FF7 titles seem to misunderstand him in certain ways, and I'd like to set the record straight since he's my favorite video game character. So, this is Cloud Strife, the world's strongest marshmallow. Obviously, there are going to be minor spoilers for the following properties. You have been warned. The first order of business is to lay out and address some of the misconceptions around Cloud's character. Cloud is quite literally JRPG man. He's essentially the mascot for the entire genre. He's iconic in both his original design as well as his updated modern design. And with that fame comes a copious amount of headcanon, and as mentioned earlier, his cameo appearances skew his personality a bit, especially because they try to boil down his entire persona into just a few scenes. It also doesn't help that in the original Final Fantasy VII, he's very much a self-insert character in many respects, which means that a lot of people have projected their own ideals and desires onto him, something that the remake games are doing a good job of pushing back on. Now, before we get into the meat of this, we do need to kind of clear up some common misconceptions about Cloud Strife, the man. Number 1. Cloud is cool and brooding and edgy. On a surface level, yeah, he comes off that way, but in reality, no. Cloud is actually none of these things. He is what a teenage boy thinks cool is. At his core, Cloud is a lonely and awkward young man who hasn't had the opportunity to develop his social skills properly. And in order to cover for this, he plays like he's aloof or cold-hearted, but that's not who he actually is. He's very much someone starved of connection, and when he's included in the fun, the facade drops almost immediately. Deep down, all Cloud wants is to be included, something that he rarely, if ever, experienced growing up. We can see how quickly he responds to Aerith going out of her way to bring him into her world, while by comparison he's treated as an outsider by Avalanche and is even brushed off by Tifa of all people and left to wander town alone early on in FF7 Remake. Remake does well to show the contrast between Cloud's experience in Sector 7 and Sector 5 respectively, and how his Sector 5 adventure with Aerith so rapidly evolves him as a person. He's really a soft-hearted and very kind person, but he hides behind that emotional armor that he's built up over the years. At his core, he's just a lost kid trying to find his way. Misconception number 2. Cloud is a hero who wants to save the world. Not really. Cloud isn't a hero in the traditional sense. His deepest desire is to be cherished, loved, and/or respected. And because of that desire, he leaves home to become a soldier in the Shinra Electric Power Company. One of the reasons he does this is to impress Tifa, his childhood crush, but that's more of a bonus reward. The real reason is deeper and sadder. Cloud is trying to become someone who matters, someone worthy of love. Growing up isolated and overlooked, he convinces himself that the only way to be respected, admired, or loved is to become powerful. So of course he latches on to Sephiroth as a role model, the perfect soldier, the living legend, the war hero, as he was at the time. This is not because he wants to protect people, not because he wants to save the world, but because he wants to feel worthy of existing in it. Cloud doesn't really become a hero because of some noble calling. He becomes a hero by accident, through devotion, not ambition. Cloud just wants to protect Aerith, and as a knock-on effect of doing so, he ends up aligned with good more often than evil because Aerith is a fundamentally good person. And due to her influence, he in turn aspires to be a better person, as she's the reason he starts helping people in Sector 5 for little to no cost. For most of the story, Cloud doesn't want to be a hero. He has to be a hero. And that idea is the tragedy behind his character, or just one of the tragedies behind his character. Misconception number 3. Cloud's story is about becoming strong enough to move on. This one may ruffle some feathers. Some people think Cloud's story is about moving on from loss. But given the content of the sequels to Final Fantasy VII, I'm led to believe something else. So, during his adventure, Cloud loses Aerith, and is permanently scarred by that. But he seems to recover at the end of Advent Children, right? Nah, not really. Let me elaborate. While this isn't a shipping video, we have to talk about the love triangle since it's integral to Final Fantasy VII's main narrative. Cloud never seems to move on from Aerith. I say this for two reasons. One, after Final Fantasy VII, during Advent Children, Cloud is shown to be in complete despair. He's not answering his phone, he's living in Aerith's church instead of staying in his actual home with Tifa, Barrett, Marlene, and Denzel. So he's clearly not okay, at least until the end of the movie. Reason 2. However, in Dirge of Cerberus, Cloud and Tifa are still described as friends by the strategy guide, which is literally the only info we get on their relationship status, while other characters like Cid and Shara are explicitly depicted as having gotten married at some point after the original FF7. While this doesn't seem like relevant information, it speaks to Cloud's unwillingness to let go of Aerith, even a year after Advent Children, especially since we know Tifa loves Cloud romantically. We also know Cloud is physically attracted to Tifa, so interest is not an issue there. We have to ask why they're not together at that point when there are no longer any obstacles to it, which brings us back to the main point, the misconception that FF7 is about loss and moving on from loss. Cloud just doesn't. Dirge of Cerberus is the latest thing on the Final Fantasy VII timeline at the moment, and that's where it shows Cloud is emotionally, just surviving but not really living. Aerith's loss is profoundly engraved in Cloud's heart and psyche, but from what we see, he's really just managing it instead of healing from it. Which is why I say that I don't think his story is about moving on, because again, he just doesn't. These three main misconceptions are due to a multitude of factors. Gooners, they ruin everything. Just because you watch a bunch of hentai with Tifa in it does not make you a fan. Now then, the remake games are going out of their way to rectify some of these, as stated by FF7 Rebirth director Naoki Hamaguchi in an interview with Automaton. He said that the dev team is going out of their way to clarify misconceptions by providing answers and definitive commentary within the game's content. I'll be sure to link the interview in the description if you're curious. But the context was that he was asked about Aerith having a sisterly type of dynamic with Cloud, but that was a translation error because in Japanese, the context of what he was saying is very different because, you know, they refer to each other as sister as in like the elder of the group or somebody who takes care of everyone in the group and not literally familial sister. That point speaks to, again, many of the misconceptions within the community because of how massive Final Fantasy VII is and the time at which it came out, when the methodology within translating Japanese media was more literal as opposed to how now it's less literal and more focused on maintaining the context so that it fits whatever language it's translated into, so that it makes sense to a native English speaker. How the dev team continues to set the record straight remains to be seen, but you know things are getting out of control when the director has to come out and tell people to stop downplaying Cloud and Aerith's relationship. If Cloud wasn't shown to have moved on to Tifa by Dirge of Cerberus, then it stands to reason that maybe there's a lot more going on with Cloud as a character now, and that they're dialing back the self-insert nature of his role, so he's more fleshed out. As you can see, Cloud and Final Fantasy VII by extension have a lot of weirdness within the fandom when it comes to what's canon, but hopefully I've helped set the record straight somewhat. And now with that out of the way, it's time to get into the meat of who Cloud Strife actually is. Cloud's story is actually a quintessentially male struggle, as it mirrors the challenges that most men spend their lives wrestling with. It's about searching for love, but not necessarily what you'd see in a love story. It's a bit more personal than just finding a partner. Cloud is in search of love and recognition, but what kind of love is he seeking? Well, we can piece it together by analyzing some of his behavior throughout the FF7 compilation. Remember how we went over the fact that Cloud and Tifa never officially get together despite there being no obstacles to said engagement? He's apparently still hung up on Aerith, so when you compare and contrast his relationships with Tifa and Aerith respectively, you notice a key difference. Tifa loves Cloud, and Aerith loves Cloud, but they both love him in completely opposite ways. Tifa's love for Cloud is conditional, in that their dynamic is built upon expectations, terms and conditions, if you will. When I say Tifa's love is conditional, I don't mean that it's lesser or selfish. Most adult love is conditional. It's shaped by shared history, mutual needs, and realistic expectations. Tifa sees the Cloud she expects, but not the Cloud that he is. On the other hand, Aerith's love for Cloud is unconditional. She just loves Cloud for who he is, the man beneath all the performance, and he in turn opens up to Aerith in ways that he doesn't with anyone else, not even for Tifa. Cloud is a uniquely damaged person in that his life has been an absolute train wreck ever since he left Nibelheim. He's been stripped of nearly everything that mattered to him early in life, save for Tifa, and she only barely survived that herself. He was even stripped of his identity. So tying this back to conditional versus unconditional love, Cloud is so broken down that the only thing that can heal him is unconditional love. There's nothing wrong with Tifa's conditional love, as I said earlier. She's not asking for anything unreasonable. It's just that Cloud can't give her what she needs until he heals, and right now he can't heal. After all, the surest sign of true acceptance would be for Cloud to finally let Tifa into his heart, but that just doesn't seem to happen. He can manage the pain, he can let go of his guilt, but he still can't let Aerith go, even after Advent Children. Cloud at this point has feelings, much aligned with the words of the great philosopher, Aru.
Oh, asshole, mother, go f yourself, you piece of.
Wait, no, wrong clip. That's how Cloud feels about Sephiroth.
I think he really deserves these moments with her, especially with how miserable he was in Advent Children and how he just wanted to die because she was gone.
There is a massive hole in Cloud's life, and while he does let go of his guilt, the kind of love that Tifa gives him is not enough for him to let her in. So now I think it's time we discuss why conditional love is not enough for Cloud. With these two types of love in mind, you can extrapolate Cloud's personal experience with love from Final Fantasy VII and where he is mentally, psychologically, emotionally. Cloud, in receiving unconditional love from Aerith, actually started to heal, despite being psychologically unstable and suffering from PTSD at the time. The only time we see Cloud smile consistently are while he's traveling the world with the party, and specifically when he's with Aerith. Cloud doesn't want to be strong. He doesn't actually want to be famous. He doesn't really even want to be a hero, he just wants to be loved. Becoming a soldier or a war hero was just a means to an end for him. It was a currency he could exchange for what he truly wanted, love. He built his entire identity out of borrowed pieces, Zack's experiences, Sephiroth's demeanor, because he thinks that love must be earned, not simply given. But Aerith gave it to Cloud freely, and he loved her for it, which in turn is why he's so deeply and permanently scarred from losing her. To tie this back to the idea that Cloud's story is a microcosm of a man's struggle, we can see now that his experience is an allegory for something men are deeply fearful of. That no one will ever love us for who we are, that they'll only ever love us for what we provide or accomplish. So I'm about to tell you something that might blow your mind, but it's pretty universally true for the most part. So for men, our only guaranteed source of unconditional love comes from our mothers. Deep down, we fear that our mothers are the only person that will ever love us unconditionally with no strings attached. Our fathers, while they may love us unconditionally, are obligated to teach us how to be men. There's a goal to that relationship that makes it functionally conditional. A secondary fear that we all have is that we miss the connection with somebody who loves us unconditionally. And that's doubly scary for men, specifically because of what I mentioned before with how very rarely do we ever receive unconditional love. So with regard to Cloud, he has no father in his life, and his mother was murdered by Sephiroth. When you project the need for unconditional love onto his story, you can then see why Cloud latches onto Aerith, and in turn why he was so broken by her death. His greatest fear was realized in that moment on the altar. His only source of unconditional love was taken away from him. Aside from his mother, Cloud lost maybe the only other person he'd ever know that loved him unconditionally. That is my greatest fear, and Cloud is living that nightmare day in and day out. For many of you, that probably was a subconscious fear, though now it's probably conscious because I put words to it. I'd say you're welcome, but I may have also just cursed you with this knowledge, so sorry? Didn't mean to open Pandora's box there. At the end of the day, Cloud is in search of love and recognition, but what kind of love is he seeking? He's seeking someone who'll love him without needing him to be strong. Someone that loves the awkward and shy young man hidden beneath the alien hybrid super soldier that he is. I guard my heart because beneath the bravado and emotional armor, it's soft on the inside, like a marshmallow. And like Cloud, there's an empty space there, and it's shaped like a person. I hope I find them, and I hope Cloud does too. Not because he's cool or strong or because he's a chick magnet, but because in his struggles I see my own, and I also see a cautionary tale to hold on to what you have. That's why Cloud Strife is my favorite video game character. Anyway, that's all I got for now. So until then, I'll see you all next time, whenever that is.